Scano Suguego, hello. No sa se ni gaso, onande ge hono ni makwento da, konde ni wage shout da. Hello, my Indian name is Honosase, which means he builds a new house. My English name is Eddie Thomas. I'm from the Onondaga Nation, Largeo clan, and I reside here in Six Nations.
Well, Scano Tsego, and good afternoon. My name is Mark Hill. I'm from the Mohawk Nation Bear Clan, currently serving as the 58th elected chief of Six Nations of the Grand River Territory. I started this journey when I was 19 years old, first elected to the council as a band councillor, and I wanted to learn more of why we didn't have certain things and what was the cause or barriers of why we didn't have certain things. And it's easy to complain and look at issues, but when we're collectively coming together and finding out the ways of solutions, that's the part of work that I wanted to be a part of and continue to want to be a part of. And so that led me, after the 9 years as an elected councillor, doing the due diligence work that I had to learn my community more and to figure out at the end of the day, why can't we have a better life?
My role in the community is I'm a cultural resource. So since I was a little, I was taught Senion Guayhot, so our native ways. And so I was taught language, song, dance, and our old stories about where we come from and how we put ceremonies through and such. So my connection to the river, we call it Gihenko Waknit, which is Grand River. My birthplace, this is where we come from. Swam in the river and fished in the river, canoe and kayak, and do different things throughout the river. Today, we see a lot of pollution that shouldn't be.
As a young child, I was attracted to the water and all of the living things that were around it. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful childhood because of that. My name's Ellie Joseph, born and raised here on Six Nations Reserve and Mohawk Turtle Clan. And I bought my first canoe when I was about 16 years old. Had a summer job, saved up the money, and that was my first canoe. I paddled a lot. It was a bit of freedom for me, adventure, exploration, but also it was a lot of tranquility for me going through my adolescent years. And I just stayed connected to that river to this day. Now I'm nearly 70 years old, but being along the river, as I said, has been a real blessing for me. And I just enjoy the river. I like to share the river with my community and people beyond my community because it just gives me such blessing. When I was a child, we swam in the river. We had a boat. My family had a speedboat. We used to ski in the river. We paddled in the river and we swam. We had company coming over and they would enjoy the river along with us. I remember it being not as full of wildlife as it is today.
Sego, Makashingets, Ganegahaga Niwagahuan Jordan, Wakatuhuni, Six Nations Nidawageno. Hi, my name is Makasha Looking Horse, and I'm from Six Nations. So it really started from a very young age, and it's more so of a responsibility to take care of the water as a Mohawk woman and a Lakota woman. When we carry a child and our babies is surrounded by amniotic fluid, which is essentially water. So water was our first environment before we even came into this world. And that's why we have to take care of that water, and that's where our connection first starts with water. When I first started to work on my mother's water research project, I was learning all kinds of different facts about our reserve, that only 10% of our reserve is hooked up to the water treatment plant, that there's a lot of moms struggling because they can't afford the infrastructure to put in their house to get clean water, and that our rivers and creeks are really polluted. And I think it's very clear to all of us that that is climate change, and that our planet is warming up, and that our water is disappearing, and our people aren't healthy and our lands aren't healthy and very toxic. And even this river right behind me is really toxic. There's Agent Orange in it. There's all kinds of different chemicals because all of the cities above us do not care what they put into the river. The elders have always said that we're only as healthy as our environment and our waters. And until we get our waters clean, then our community can be healthy and our future generations can be healthy. That's why I take clean water so seriously, is because I want my community to be healthy.
So that kind of drove me to where I am today as chief, being my third year in. It also was a huge eye-opening March of 2020, where the whole globe was hit with a worldwide health pandemic. Being 3 months in the role, and then now having to have a radar on what's coming to our territory and how we're going to respond. Six Nations is over 50,000 acres of land. Mind you, we have a lot more that was wrongfully took from us. But mind you, with what we did have, we knew we had to protect. And so that meant closing access to 21 access points to our territory and having manned checkpoints at 9 of those 21 access points. And I asked myself, and in fact, I remember when the decision was made, going back to my office and feeling entirely sick to my stomach, because that then meant, are we doing the right thing? Is that going to heighten or amplify more racism towards our people? And so we really had to be strategic, and we really had to come up with plans to say, what are we doing with those members who are in overcrowded housing, who don't have access to running water, who have minimal funds coming in or on fixed incomes, single mothers with multiple children, our elders who are already having issues prior to COVID. Where are all they, and how are we going to help them?
Yeah, I think COVID made a lot of things difficult, and even just the everyday life that is already difficult to truck in water or fill up your water jugs in town and then bring them all the way back to your home. And if you're a single mom, that makes life that much more harder, because then you're not maybe keeping your distance from your family members that usually help you. COVID just adds so much more layers of difficulty to everyday life that Indigenous peoples and First Nations peoples already have.
When I was small, most people in our community had dug wells. And back then, the wells were probably safe. We drank from it. I'm here today, having consumed that water all my life. I remained a healthy child because of that. When we became educated on safe drinking water in wells, and our health services were ensuring that we get our wells tested, then a lot of the wells were discovered to not be safe drinking water. We didn't have any kind of a water treatment plant when I was a kid. We've come a long way, but there are a lot of people in the reserve that don't have the resources that I do.
So I think that the issue is Canada, because why is it that all of or most of the reserves within Canada, First Nations reserves within Canada, don't have clean drinking water or have boil water advisory or have some kind of issues with water? Because Six Nations doesn't have boil water advisories. That's because we don't qualify for a boil water advisory, but we still have huge water issues. And really, it's about the Canadian government not respecting and not treating our people like human beings.
Well, first and foremost, my dream is that every household has access to clean water. Simple. There's no way, shape, or form you can go in any other area within this country and, other than First Nations territories, and have no water. We look at the current Liberal majority government and Trudeau's plan of action of eliminating, all water boil advisories. He's behind in that. It's a typical politician promise that our people just are sick of and can't wait any longer for. So in the meantime, we have to come up with our own solutions. As much as it's great to have, and don't get me wrong, the water treatment plant is doing its job in filtering out the source of water from the Grand River, which again in return goes to our homes and taps and so forth. But we have to look at, again, all while simultaneously doing this, the water distribution lines, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, which will oversee all of our territory and getting actually homes hooked up to that line, but all while doing that, making sure we're replacing the lagoons and building out our wastewater infrastructure and what that looks like. And all this being said, it all comes down to funding. Both of these projects together, I would say, and again, with the day and age we're in now, with inflation and everything else and high costs, we're probably looking at over $350 million to see actual results and not have the fear of getting sick. We still have those very issues today. And I think the impacts of COVID were clear because the homes that weren't connected to the water line, the homes that still have zero access to water, the homes that have to get water trucked in, the cost amplified on families. And I think that was one of the main impacts that I seen, is because, people were home more. Families had no choice, especially when you're quarantining. If you don't have water coming out of your tap, where are you getting it from?
If it wasn't for us, this would be all United States of America. This is why we were granted the 6 miles on either side of the Grand River from the mouth to the source. Because we prevented that. We captured them. We marched them back across the border and sent them back. It was our medicines and it was our protection that kept them safe. That's why the Queen gave us this land. And then when people started to live on it, we were told, when we went for help, we were told by the government, deal with it yourself. So how were we supposed to deal with it? Were we supposed to kill people? That's not in our way. We were told we were brothers. So why are our brothers stealing our land and doing this stuff to us? Why are we supposed to go and kill them? That's not in our way. They had the power to stop this and they didn't. But it goes even deeper than that because it goes into residential schools. And that's the whole reason for residential schools. Was because it was population control. The culture is what ties us to the land. So without the culture, the people ain't gonna need the land. This is one of the biggest reasons for residential school, on top of assimilation. But that was the main reason for assimilation, was if they don't think about the land no more, they're not gonna need it. And if we kill enough of them, hey, we don't have to worry about hundreds and thousands, maybe even millions of them in the future. And the hardest thing for me right now, in this day and age, right now for myself, is that I can speak my language, but I have no one to talk to. This is one of the things that hurts the most. We're moving in the right direction because people are coming back and they're seeing, throughout COVID, they've seen the power of having that gratitude, that they'll know what it is to have freedom and to be able to live where there's water, where there's food, where you can sustain yourself. These are things that the government and the higher powers don't want to happen. Because if you can sustain yourself, you're a free person.
It's young leadership, it's people like ourselves and our roles that we're going to continue to push this forward. And if we have to look at our ways of doing different business and our way of governing and the way to actually succeed of actually getting homes hooked up to water, then we'll do it ourselves.